One of my friends has this saying, if you let people talk long enough, eventually they'll tell the truth. Boy, was he right. For those who don't know, rumor has it that Warner Brothers will cast a black guy to play Superman in Ta-Nehisi Coates and Jar Jar Abrams' upcoming Not Superman film. The rumor came out on May 5th, which was, incidentally, Henry Cavill's birthday, making it one hell of a douchey birthday present. The rumor managed to piss off everyone, from Henry Cavill fans, to people who hate race swapping, to the SJWs who love it, but were pissed because it'll be Clark Kent, not Val Zod or Calvin Ellis. I already did a video about why changing Superman's race is a dumb idea. I'll link to that above. The short version is simply that Superman is iconic. We all know his story without ever reading the comic or watching the movie. We know what he looks like to the point that we can use him as reference when describing real people. Because of that, it's next to impossible to change anything major about Superman, from his name to his powers to his race. Any changes from what we know are seen to be wrong. Don't take my word for it. Just look at how people reacted to Zack Snyder's take on Superman. Most people rejected it because that's not how Superman would act. We know his personality, how he views the world, people, and himself, and what we saw in Man of Steel wasn't that. Personally, I didn't mind because I got what Zack Snyder was going for. He wanted to show how a real person would deal with finding out he's an alien, and how isolated and burdened he'd feel with having to hide his powers and not being human. And that's fine. It's just not Superman. And that was just changing his personality. When it comes to changing his race, it's a much bigger deal, and it's one that has no legitimate reason to be done. As many people pointed out on social media, there are plenty of other characters you could use who are basically Black Superman, like Icon. He came to Earth as an adult, has lived here for about 100 years, and is openly conservative. There's no good reason not to use that character, or any number of the other knockoff Supermen DC Comics has who happen to be black. The only reason they would have not to use them is because none of them are as popular or beloved as Superman. That's the real reason for the change, and like my friend said, if you wait long enough, someone will eventually tell the truth. Lady Gravemaster sent this screen cap to me on Twitter. It's by some rando who locked their page after tweeting it, but the damage was already done. Quote, black characters can only succeed by replacing originally white characters, otherwise they remain a sidekick or forgotten to limbo. This is the harsh truth. Stop fighting it. The era of Black Superman begins now. Yes, this is the harsh truth. None of these people actually care about black characters. Like Young Rippa says, they only think white characters are legitimate. But the question is why? And I think the tweet tells us. Because they don't think black characters can ever be popular on their own. Which is strange because lots of people like Blade, Spawn, Storm, Black Panther, Luke Cage, Steel, and Jon Stewart, just to name a few. None of them are as iconic as Superman or Batman, but few characters are. But then again, we see this happening with less popular characters all the time, especially if they're ginger. They just get race swapped instantly, the latest one being Red Sonja. The thing is, this really isn't about the race of the characters. It's really about racial politics. Within the black community, there's this idea that other people want to be like black people, but don't want to be black people. Other people will adopt our style, our music, our lingo, but they don't actually want to look black. This also comes out of the internalized self-hatred within the black community, of seeing black as bad and white as good, and then projecting this onto other people's perception of blackness. Now, that's not to say that other races don't look down on black people, because that would be a lie. Plenty of people do that, with no hesitation. This isn't in black folks' heads, this actually happens. The same with the idea of white skin along with blonde hair and blue eyes being good and the pinnacle of beauty. That's all over the place. If this is the world you live in, then seeing a character like Superman, who is the pinnacle of the white ideal, minus the blonde hair, presents a problem. He's beloved and iconic, and you're not, and you never will be. What to do? Well, what you could do is change Superman's race. After all, he's just a fictional character. He's not real. Not that that would stop anyone. See BBC's Black Anne Boleyn. So you can just change his race. Make him black. And now he would be the pinnacle of blackness and iconic. The idea is simple. Everybody likes Superman and he's crazy popular. So if you make Superman black and everybody likes him, then they have to like black people in blackness and then black folks will be popular. Except that's not how the real world works. Everyone knows Superman isn't black, so they would never accept the change. The black Superman would never be the real Superman. Even if he became popular, he would never be as popular as the real thing. Don't take my word for it, just ask Miles Morales. We call him by his full name. We don't call him Spider-Man. Why? Because he's not Spider-Man. Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Miles is just some kid using his name. It didn't work because Spider-Man is iconic. We all know who he is and what he looks like, and it ain't like Miles Morales. Now, I can already hear people saying, what about Aquaman? They changed him. Well, no one cares about Aquaman. That, and because Jason Momoa is a badass. Nobody went to see Aquaman. They went to see Jason Momoa. His presence is what made the character cool. You could have called the movie Big Sexy and it'd have made $1 billion and had mostly men in the audience. It's Jason Momoa that made that movie work. Don't nobody give two Amber Heards about Aquaman. Now, in fairness, the less iconic the character, the more you're going to be able to make those changes. But it still makes no sense when there are plenty of non-white characters to use. What that tells us is that the issue isn't the lack of so-called diversity. The issue is popularity, just like the rando admitted. These characters aren't and probably won't ever be as popular as the older white characters, so the only way to get around that is to replace the white characters. Or as Dan Slott said, quote, when adapting comics to TV and movies or rebooting comics today, there's no reason to have the iconic characters be straight white men. The only reason they were created that way is because they were created in the 30s and the 60s when that was a default. It's not the 60s anymore. Yes, we know. We've unfortunately read your comics. Leave it to Dan Slott to yet again have the shittiest take on what makes characters iconic. Here's a tip, Dan. If you change the character from what they originally were, then it's not the character people love and they won't like it. Don't take my word for it. See the reaction to the Clone Saga or whatever the fuck it was you did with Doc Ock. People were pissed by the idea that the Spider-Man they grew up reading was a clone, and the real Spider-Man was Ben Reilly. That was the idea behind the Clone Saga. 30 years of history scrapped just like that. The people who came up with the idea knew it'd go over badly, so they planned to have a way to back out if the reaction was too negative. Unfortunately, Marvel was a complete mess at the time, with rotating editors, new events, and internal bickering, so what should have been a 12-issue story arc turned into a years-long spider bukkake. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and they pissed off fans. The result was that Spider-Man sales tanked, and it took years for Spider-Man to recover from that as a character, only to be shat on one more day by Joe Quesada. But what Dan doesn't mention is that those characters from the 30s and 60s had nearly 60 to 80 years of development and pop cultural appeal. The reason they lasted so long is because they remained relatively unchanged for decades. That's how everyone knows who they are. That's how they became iconic. You can't randomly change major aspects of the character, including their appearance, without it bothering people. Even getting rid of the trunks on Superman and Batman looked wrong, even though it makes no sense for them to be wearing trunks. That's because we know what the characters look like. We know who they are, and when you start changing things, it's no longer the characters we love. To this point, if Disney recast Black Panther, they need to cast an actor as dark as Chadwick, or they'll be wrong because we all know T'Challa has dark skin. Anyone they cast as Iron Man or Captain America would have to look similar to or at least act like Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans. Their performances are etched into people's minds to the point that that's the way people think those characters should be. The same way Christopher Reeve defined Superman and Kevin Conroy defined Batman. But there's a second element to Dan Slott's tweet. He's not just saying, like the rando, that black characters can't get over. He's also saying there's something wrong with having straight white male characters. He presents being straight, white, and male as a bad thing. Now, I can see why he might think that of himself, with this terrible character and eating habits, but not about white guys in general. Why is it wrong to have white characters? Why is it wrong for them to be male or straight? Why is this a bad thing? And if the argument being made is that people need to see characters who look like them in order to feel good about themselves, what message does it send when you're deliberately removing all positive portrayals of straight white men? Are white boys and men supposed to see themselves as the villains or incapable of being heroes? The whole thing makes it seem less like this is about building up so-called marginalized groups, and more about tearing down a specific group, even if it means destroying the very thing you claim you love. Now, SJWs know this. It's just that they don't want to admit it because then they'd have to tell the truth. Quote, and you always get people saying, why not create new characters who aren't straight white men? Missing the point that characters like that are being created all the time, but it's hard for them to compete with famous iconic characters with decades of history behind them. So the issue isn't that no one can create new characters. It's that those characters would actually have to compete with beloved characters, and these people know that's really hard to do. But instead of trying to do it and letting those characters develop over time and build up an audience, these people want to jack the audience of the more popular characters. Quote, it's a franchise-dominated landscape, and you can't just will new franchises into being. You'll make much faster progress by diversifying the franchises that already exist. No, you won't. You'll be rejected, just like we've seen with Star Wars, Star Trek, and Doctor Who. The moment fans realize what you're doing to their beloved, iconic characters, they'll bounce. Wasn't that just rumored to happen with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier? That the moment they went BLM in the show, the streaming numbers tanked? People ain't sticking around while you tear down the stuff they care about. They know who the real characters are, and what you're presenting ain't the real characters. People want McDonald's, and you're giving them homemade hamburgers. This is better than McDonald's. It's better than McDonald's? Trust me, it ain't. Like Eddie Murphy said, it's this sad mass of meat with green peppers hanging out the side, wrapped in soggy Wonder Bread with some ketchup paste in the middle. It's fucking disgusting. Even a dog wouldn't eat it. I know. I watched to turn away. That's Black Superman. Your sad-ass homemade better than McDonald's hamburger. Don't nobody want to see your race-swap Superman. They want to see the real Superman. I said the real Superman. I'm loving it. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.